So a while back, I had an opportunity to sit down with the legend himself, Mr. Larry Fuller, and we talked about a lot of stuff. But this video was dedicated to his humble beginnings as well as the creation and the publication of Ebon. Just kind of tell me about your upbringing a little bit.
Well, I was born in New Orleans, and my folks were were struggling financially, like a lot of people. And I was the oldest child, and then I had a brother, and then I had a sister, and then another brother who passed away when he was very, very young, like 17, wow. 18 months or something. Anyway, and he would be like 70 years old now. But I was the oldest, and so my mother and my stepfather came from large families. So I got shipped off to a couple of families because, that's kind of what people did to help each other out. And right. Me being the oldest. And I wound up living with some cousins on my mother's side who were school teachers. And that is where I started to, they had a library at home. And so I discovered, a lot of stuff, Robert Louis Stevenson, whoever, you could think of, all of that, the Hardy Boys, right. That kind of stuff. And I got into, then I got into where I really liked fiction and adventures and all like that. And I just read. And then I got into comics, I guess, around that same time. My early favorite comics were like Little Lulu. I don't know if you remember Little Lulu, Nancy, Tarzan, Cats and Pajama Kids, and a lot of stuff like that. Red Rider, a lot of Red Rider, Lone Ranger, all those kind. Mandrake the Magician, who had a brother, Lothar.
Lothar, yes, sir.
Yeah, and the Phantom, which the Phantom, I still I read the Phantom to this day. The Phantom is big in a lot of places. Like my wife is from Norway, and the Phantom is huge in Scandinavia. I mean, there's like these, it's like a Jimi Hendrix following or something. They love the Phantom, and so I have a lot of Phantom books from over there. Stuff like that. So I got into comics, but I just had an idea when I was in the Air Force. I had the idea for Ebon and a couple of other characters, and just one thing led to another. When I got out of the Air Force, I met Gary Arlington, who was a famous guy who ran a comic book store in San Francisco, and he's the person who published Ebon. And but he knew everybody, anybody that artists in his store. Like the first time I went there, I met Robert Crumb, but I didn't even know who he was. But I knew a lot of other underground guys, and like Spain Rodriguez was my favorite one. And Gary decided that he thought we should publish the first Black superhero. Well, I had the idea for the hero, except that the first artist I had, he was a painter. He was a cable car guy, and he I met him on a cable car, and we got to talking. And anyway, one thing led to another. He worked on Ebon for a while, but I was new, I was fresh, I was young, I was crazy. I had never done anything like that before. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew some artists all the artists I met at Gary's store, they showed me a lot of technical stuff, page sizes and all that kind of stuff. And but the guy, the artist, he decided after a while that he didn't want to draw it, so I couldn't find another one. So that's how I got to do the book that everybody is so involved with now. I made a storyboard of it, and it took me about 4 months. And I was going to show that to some other real artists, and Gary took it and published it. And that's how it came out.
Wow. So at any point during those 4 months, there had up to this point, there had never ever been, to our knowledge, to our going back and looking at several books in the golden age and onward, even into 1969 when you started to work on this. At any point did you say to yourself, man, this ain't gonna work? Like this, man, did you ever get discouraged and like maybe take a long pause and then get back up? Because you see a lot of giants right before they get to the top of the hill. There's that point to where it's like it's a turning point for them. Did you have that with
Yeah,
this?
I had some of that, and but I had started to do it, and I did it. And the thing about it is, when you have something like that, I always think about how well you're going to feel when you get it done. Never mind how it comes out. You had your goal. You decided, I'm going to do it, and I did it. And then here's the other thing: I did it, and I didn't have a cover because I just did the whole story. It was like a storyboard, so that an artist could see it, and I wouldn't be standing around ranting and raving about how I wanted it done. You see what I'm saying? Because back then there was no internet. It's like you do it by telephone and newspaper ad. The life moved at a slower pace, and nowadays everything is lightning speed. But the other guy got tired of me running up to his house, ranting and raving about how I wanted it, because I get inspired. You see, you have an idea. If you're a creator, creators don't think like business people. I mean, a business person or military person is organized. This goes here, that goes there. Cross those T's, dot those I's. A writer or somebody like that, or even worse, a poet. Not knocking poets, because I've written some myself, but you think by association, connotation. So if you see a cat walking across the street, you might think how you want a woman in one of your stories to dress. It doesn't seem like it relates at the time. Well, that's how I was kind of wild-haired. I was young, I hadn't done it before, didn't know anything about it. And when I got warmed up, I got excited, and I probably wasn't as efficient as I could be. So I made the whole book, the storyboard, that's now the book, so that when an artist came along, Gary Arlington knew all these artists, they can look at it and they can have an idea of what I had in mind. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. What I decided to do, I've read Ebon before, but what I decided to do today is I wanted to read it again. And sometimes it's like a movie or reading a book. You read it the first time, it's like, oh, okay, it's cool. I mean, I get it. But you have to really read it again and again to really chew on it and really chew on it. Because for an amateur artist, for amateur writer, this was actually a really, really good story. This would hold up today.
Somebody told me that last night.
Yeah, this would hold up today, and it's crazy. A lot of the tones to the comic will still obviously hold up today, and the flow of it was nice. Like, it didn't just bounce around. You can really tell when you close that book. When you close Ebon. Well, so the pronunciation is it Ebon or Ebon?
Well, I always said Ebon, but just about 2 weeks ago, I got into a conversation with someone, and they said Ebon, and we're talking, and I said Ebon, and he goes, "What?" It's okay. It's either one. Ebon, Ebon. I always thought Ebon. But it's perfectly okay if it's Ebon.
So and I'm just reading the book. And Valentine, what was your inspiration for his name?
Well, it's like a lot. It was a thing about the heart. When I figured out how he was going to get his powers, I realized he was going, and the heart transplants had just started to happen. It was a guy. his name was Christian Barnard. He's a famous South African doctor, white South African, who allegedly performed the first known heart transplant. And I read about this while I was stationed in North Dakota. And I did read about 10 years ago that there was a black South African doctor who had also done that. I don't know anything about that. I looked up a little bit of it, but the thing, I wasn't concerned about the race. I was concerned about, that was my plot device. That was, instead of having him fall into a vat of chemicals or a river full of sludge or gamma rays, I couldn't figure out how is this dude going to get his powers? And then I read about the heart transplant, and then like was reading a lot of Afrocentric stuff, and at that time the Black Panthers were a big deal, and in San Francisco where I live, and I based him basically on a couple of radio disc jockeys in the Bay Area on it. And I tell you, one of them is Sly Stone, and the other one is JJ on the radio. Anyway, he and Sly Stone were kind of like my inspirations. And the name Valentine Jones, I mean, look, I got characters named Ruth Leslie and Mercer Leslie. And so Valentine Jones, it was like, if I made that up today, somebody would go, really? The guy's got a heart, his powers come from his heart, and his name is Valentine. Hello. But I that's what I did. I made it up. It's not physics. It's a comic book. So it's, I don't see why I couldn't name it that. I had a couple of people tell me that, that name Valentine, and then his name is Jones on top of that. He's a black person. His name is Jones. Well, his name is Jones. My stepfather, his name is Jones, and all of my brothers and sisters are named Jones. So, hey, Jones is it. Jones it is.
You could have easily said, okay, I'm going to make this Ebon comic and I'm going to slide it into somebody else's, in a collection of stories somewhere else, and he'll just be a black superhero in the collection. It's a lot easier maybe to do it that way if I have a friend or a buddy that's working on the comic. But you decided to say, I'm looking around, I don't see a black superhero in his own title written by black folks. And maybe that wasn't your approach. Maybe you weren't looking at that. Subsequently, that's what happened. You closed the book, boom, it got printed. When did you start to kind of hear people kind of talk about it?
That was only a few years ago, to tell you the truth, because it died, and it was like it's a song by Bob Dylan. He talks about his back pages. Well, it was like part of my back pages. I put it out. It was an early work. I started learning the craft of making comics, and then I met my guy Ray Horn. He died almost 26 years ago. But he when I met him, he was the only other black guy I knew that was writing or drawing comics. Now, we lived in San Francisco. We didn't know that back east and on the East Coast and even in the Midwest, like people like Grass Green and a lot of other people, like there are people I met decades later that I had no idea they were black. Like I met Paris Cullins in Philadelphia in 2007. I met this guy and he said, yeah, I'm Paris Cullins. And I couldn't believe it. I had been following him for years. I had no idea he was a brother. I had like no idea. So we were the only ones. I met Ray Horn and we supported each other, and we decided to start making comics together. So that's when I started using my GI Bill and going to art school. And and I didn't go to art school to get a degree. I went to art school to learn how to draw perspective and how to do things like that.
Another thing, I've read in certain places where people have said there was the hopes of working on Ebon #2, but you kind of was like, and that's when you kind of went and start doing those other type of genres and comics. But did you kind of have a storyboard? Did you kind of have an idea what Ebon 2 was going to be?
Well, I have been working on that lately. I wrote one complete story that I gave to an artist, and it's sort of like outside of the continuity of what the other thing I'm working on. It's like one of those, like the way comics used to be. If you had Batman, you had your main cover story, and then maybe you might have a second story in there, a shorter story. Well, I got one of those, but I could, with a little tweaking, I could fit it into the continuity of the thing I'm working on. I'm almost finished with the story of the second, and it's not going. It's after what happened then. It's obviously decades after what happened then. And I have to tell you that I didn't have any. Somebody tasked me with this, and then people in these groups, like you're probably in there somewhere yourself, that they convinced me that I should write, and more about Ebon. And I have to tell you that I've told them, everybody knows this is not a secret, I didn't have anything for Ebon. I have gotten a lot of enthusiasm for this Ebon again since I've been writing on the story for months. I just didn't have anything that I wanted to write about, but I've gotten past that, so I'm almost finished with that.
Well, congratulations, man. Because I'm sure a lot of people over the years wish they can get a hold of you and try to persuade you to do an Ebon 2. And I know it hasn't been on your mind. Like, this book has virtually been, I don't want to say unheard of, but it didn't have the cult following that maybe you would have liked it to have back in the day. If you've gone on to do other great things. And so this was just one of the things, but there is a community that has been established within the last 2 years, and it's going strong. And I never forget somebody approaching me and saying, "Yeah, well, Tom Floyd, rest his soul, he's got Black Man, and that was out. It's the first Black superhero in his own title." And it was something about when I heard that, some said, you might want to go check the books. You might want to go back into the book. And so I dug. And, it's an old proverb that says, the deeper you dig, the blacker it gets. And it's very true. And as I was digging, I came across Ebon.
Yeah.
And I remember showing it to the other guys that were a little bit more of the historian, a little bit more. They said, this is the first Black superhero in its own title. And then from there, I just wanted to make sure that I spread the news. Another parable that says, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. Black Panther came before him, but Luke Cage was supposed to be the first Black superhero title. But then look what we have here. Independent Black artists, amateur artists, and boom, this explosion. So I appreciate it because I'm a capes and cow guy. I don't know if you watch what I post. This is what I do.
I know. I follow you guys some. I'm reading your things, and I admire the passion and dedication and commitment. And that to me is that's very, very inspiring. I have to tell you, I'm not collecting any longer. I haven't been for decades. I used to be a collector, but I'm not a collector now and haven't been for a long time. I have no plans to become one, but I am a comic book appreciator of the first order. And I love, I appreciate the fact that you guys appreciate all the stuff that's out there, myself included. And it's wonderful. Ray Horn and I used to talk about, well, we're struggling now, but probably 40 years, 50 years from now, it's going to be some guy doing his PhD thesis, and he's going to do a thesis on these two Black guys in San Francisco. And it'll probably be some white guy who this, that, or the other. Nothing against white guys, but he just, pointing it out. And he did not live to experience all of the passion and commitment among the Black comic book collectors. He didn't. He didn't. Live to see that, and he he would have been just. He would have been beside himself.
Gotcha. Well, listen, I appreciate it. Maybe if we got time, we can do a part 2 because I know there's a lot of things that we can talk about today. If you have the time, if we're allowed.
I have some time. I must tell you, like I said, I'm a pretty. I don't have any like great excitement stuff going on in my life. If you mean, like, man, did you hear about Larry Fuller? He got no. Larry was at home with his wife watching Jeopardy 6 nights last week. Man, that guy must be living on cloud nine.
We gotta give our Black kings and our elders and our pioneers their voice in our community, because this is the ones that are following these characters. These are the ones that matter the most, and you guys matter the most to us. And so we want to definitely give you that time. There definitely will be a part 2. I am going to let you get back on that book because I know that takes some time. You don't want to get writer's block, creator's block.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad I could be of some service to you there.
Oh, I know. No, the pleasure is definitely ours. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for coming and just showing us, just the origin of all this, how all this stuff came about, because it's very important. We're definitely going to do a part 2. Don't worry. Okay. I'll get in contact with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Take it easy.